Good afternoon, or perhaps I should say evening, and welcome to our discussion. Europe is entering a new security era. The war in Ukraine has forced governments to rethink defense spending, production capacity, and readiness. Europe needs faster procurement, robust supply chains, and scaled production, all of which means spending a lot more money for a long time. Can Europe translate this current sense of urgency into sustained and credible capability? What needs to happen across government, industry, and the military? To facilitate this discussion, we have a great group here. Looking forward to the conversation. Commissioner Tzitzikostas was not able to join us, so before we kick things off, we'll let him join by video. Cue the video.
Dear Presidents, dear Ministers, distinguished speakers, unfortunately, I cannot be with you in person today, since I have to be in Strasbourg for the plenary debates of the European Parliament, but I'm glad and honored to participate in the Athens Defense Summit, and in particular in the panel discussing Rearming Europe, Capability, Industry, and Strategic Urgency. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living through a period of profound change, a time when security and defense have returned to the center of Europe's political agenda. And while this is not something we would have wished for, it is the reality we must face. And Europe today is being called upon to take greater responsibility for its own security and defense, to become stronger, more resilient, and better prepared. And in this new reality, Greece is assuming an even more important role, because Greece is not simply located on the map of Europe. Greece stands at the crossroads of three continents in a strategic position connecting the European Union with the Balkans, the Middle East, and North Africa. Our ports, our maritime routes, our energy corridors, and our infrastructure are not only national assets, they are strategic European assets. And Greece is a gateway for trade, transport, energy, and security. This is precisely why its role in strengthening Europe's security architecture is so important. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, at the European Commission, we are working to ensure that Europe is prepared to respond to any threat. And military mobility is one of Europe's key deterrence pillars. Now, our objective here is very clear: to ensure that troops and military equipment can move swiftly, efficiently, and without unnecessary obstacles all across our continent. Because you cannot defend a continent if you cannot cross it. It is as simple as that. And to achieve it, we need change. So a few months ago, I presented a comprehensive package of proposals on military mobility for the European Union based on three major pillars. First, we must overcome bureaucratic barriers, and for this we are creating the so-called military Schengen, because we cannot accept military convoys being delayed at internal European borders because of missing permits or administrative procedures. That is why we are moving towards harmonizing rules and a secure digital system interoperable with NATO so that permissions can be issued within days. Second, we are strengthening European solidarity. We are proposing the creation of a solidarity mechanism for the voluntary pooling and sharing of critical dual-use assets among all member states. Because today, more than ever, cooperation is strength. And third, we are investing in infrastructure. Bridges, tunnels, railways, ports, airports, transport corridors must all be ready for the challenges of today and of tomorrow. We cannot allow strategic movements to be hindered by outdated infrastructure or years of underinvestment. And that is exactly why, in the next European budget period, the military mobility funding will be 10 times higher than in the current programming period. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for the Southeast Europe, cooperation between Greece, Bulgaria, and Romania is an excellent example of what we can achieve together. Through coordinated planning and shared priorities, we are accelerating projects that remained on paper for years, and we are transforming them into modern infrastructure. Infrastructure that strengthens growth, competitiveness, and security at the same time. Only a few days ago, I had the honor to be in Alexandroupolis to hand over 277 million euros in EU funding for the Alexandroupolis-Pythio railway line, which is part of the broader Aegean Black Sea corridor, a project of major geostrategic importance, both for Europe's defense preparedness and for Europe's economy, trade, exports, and energy networks. This strategic project, which is my top priority, is today the backbone of Europe's eastern flank. And Europe is willing to invest. Ladies and gentlemen, times have changed, and we must change with them. Europe is today building a new security architecture, one that is stronger, more resilient, more connected, and Greece stands at the forefront of this effort with a very clear plan, with targeted investments, and with stronger European cooperation. In other words, we are turning connectivity into security, infrastructure into resilience, and geography into strategic advantage. For a stronger Europe, for a more connected Europe, and of course, for a safer Europe. Thank you very much for your invitation, and I wish good luck to your very, very important gathering today.
Apostolos, Commissioner. Let's set the strategic context first with a question for the entire group, starting with you, Benita. Are we witnessing a temporary increase in defense spending driven by the war in Ukraine, or a permanent strategic transformation in Europe's security posture?
Well, first of all, let me thank you very much for having been invited. I think it's a very interesting discussion. Well, indeed, I must say the attack of Russia to Ukraine was a real wake-up call for us in Europe. And we know that we are living now in a totally disruptive international order, and also that our peace dividend is dead. Indeed, we have understood that peace is not a natural state, but it's a product of strengths, and particularly also the uncertainty around the future role of the United States in our European defense has intensified the pressure of European governments to assume greater responsibility that we have heard today everywhere. This creates a compressed timeline problem, since the military threats, they are or immediate or they are near term. But of course, as we also heard, capability development traditionally takes years or decades. So the European Union has started to do that, but of course, we have spoken a lot before, but now we have to act. And therefore, there is this Rearm Europe plan that now is even being called Readiness 2030, with 800 billion euros to be mobilized. There is also the next plan, that's the SAFE instrument, that has approximately 150 billion in loans for defense projects. And there is also the Buy Europe. There we must push to increase the EU procurement and strengthen also the European defense technological and industrial base. Now, this plan indeed has to answer to 4 major problems of the last decades. First, the failure to perceive threats or misperceptions of threats, particularly after 2014. Then second, we have been relying, as we all know, and depending on the military capability of the USA. Third, I think we have to reverse the former, stronger, totally strong dismantling of the technological and defense industrial base. I speak for the European Union, not for Greece. Indeed, the military expenditure in the year 1992, that had been in average 2.1% of GDP, went down to its lowest levels in 2015 to 1.3%. And in 2025, it was only up again at the same level as 1992. And fourth, we need joint procurement and scaling, as for instance the EDIRPA and the EDIT projects aim to coordinate purchases and boost production, and also try to unify, and that's the most difficult one, a totally fragmented market in Europe. So we prioritize the building of a true European defense union, which is evolving more and more into a broader defense and preparedness union, as we also have heard from the Commissioner, where we spend more, we spend better, we spend together, and hopefully we spend quickly, combining industrial policy, large-scale financing, and operational readiness, while, and I say that clearly, remaining complementary to NATO.
Thank you. Nikos.
I think we're living in a strategic transformation, I would say, in Europe. And this was really not accelerated by Ukraine, but Europe had some security challenges to start with. These challenges, maybe they were ignored for some time because we really did not perceive the dangers. And I must mention the illegal migration, for example, or some of the unstable actors that they are surrounded, like Lebanon or Libya, and why not mention the ambitions of Turkey to become a new Ottoman Empire. So these security challenges existed. They were probably ignored, or Europe thought that they could deal with these challenges. The war in Ukraine obviously brought another security challenge, and a European wake-up call, as I call it, that NATO no longer can cover all the security requirements of Europe, and rightly so. Even United States is very, very important to the architecture of the defense of the European continent. Nevertheless, the Europeans needed to take things on their own hands. So we're moving now from the defense, which was a taboo back 20 or 25 years ago, in spending, in terms of not spending on defense, but spending more on social programs. So now all of a sudden there's a wake-up call, and we need to do more. So the American security architecture is very, very important, not only to Europe, but to the region, because we must be thinking always about both the Middle East, Africa, and the greater region. There are a lot of security challenges coming in going forward. What we saw recently in Iran also had an effect on European borders. We saw drones coming into Europe territory. Regardless if we like it or not, at least Greece was there to set up quickly defenses. Some of the other powers, the European powers, reacted with some delay. But this goes to show you that we need to change these institutions and make them much more stronger. So we need to convert political urgency in this matter, and we need to become to improve on the institutional changes. So this is not about spending more money or re-energizing the industrial base and the technology institutions. This is really about spending for the long term. And we need to realize that Europe needs its own defense mechanism, its own defense powers. So this is going to be for the long term from that perspective.
Thank you. Miltiades.
Well, listen, I will not speak about the roots of why we have ended up here. The thing is that we have ended up in a very peculiar situation. From the one side, we want to present ourselves as a global power. On the other hand, we are unable to do it. And we don't have the means. I'm not going to talk about the policy, and I'm not going to talk about the decision-making in Europe, which is very fragmented. I'm going to talk about the base, the industrial base of Europe, and whether we can actually meet with the challenges that we have ahead of us. Back in the year 2000, Europe was building 55% of the world ships. Now it's building less than 5%. Why was that? Because deliberately, we have decided that we don't want to build anymore. We don't want to invest in shipbuilding, although we rely by 90% for our energy imports and all the material imports on shipping. That would be a very nice job to be done in Southeast Asia, and that we are going to defend some new green policies. And also, we have actually banned shipyards from any EU funding. Now that we want to build up capabilities, we are lacking infrastructure, we are lacking industries, we are lacking people, and we are lacking knowledge. And whatever we are willing to make, it costs a lot, and it takes more time. So it's not suitable for the modern war zone, where the replacement rate is one of the cornerstones of your defense capabilities. You may have excellent systems, but if the replacement rate is very slow, then you have nothing. Because it's very easy with the usage of drones, with the usage of UAVs, some of your critical defense assets to be obsolete overnight. What is happening, and I was listening to Mr. Tzitzikostas, who is doing, and I want to congratulate him because he is doing a tremendous job in putting together pieces that they were separated in the past commissions. It is important to invest in our capabilities. It's not only to invest to the new startups that have great ideas and say that we only need startups. We need the ramp up. So we need investments that are heavier, more difficult. They are looking forward into time. So to actually be able to build what we need. With the lack of investments over the last 25 years or even more in the defense sector of Europe, the gap, the technological gap between Europe and the United States has widened. The production gap between Europe and Southeast Asia is immense. So we have to fill these gaps, and of course we have also to invest in bringing in new blood in our sectors. And I'm talking about the shipbuilding sector, which is a very peculiar, but also very important for strategic autonomy. Out there on defense, but also for commercial use, because we absolutely need ships to deliver goods in our doorstep.
Thank you. Ed?
Nigel, thank you. And thank you for inviting me here today to join the panel and represent AECOM. It's an absolute privilege, humbling to be alongside such esteemed speakers, if I may add. In answering your question, I think we are living through a geopolitical strategic shift. And in that, the US is resetting, arguably rebalancing its posture globally. And I do think that we will see this endure beyond the current US administration. It's with us to stay. I think this demands an elevated level of investment by Europe in our collective security against the threat that Russia presents on our doorstep. And it's something that we're going to have to sustain for the foreseeable future.
Andrei?
Yep. First of all, thank you so much to invite me here. I'm proud to be here, especially at this time. So Russia's plans for rapid and successful completion of so-called special military operation have failed. To increase pressure and achieve its own strategic goals, the aggressor state is trying to use global geopolitical transformations, in particular the change in security priorities of major global players and instability in neighbors' regions. Kremlin regime is trying to intensify full-scale invasion, full-scale aggression against Ukraine, and to use full spectrum of hybrid warfare, including conventional weapon systems against European countries, such as combat UAVs and interceptors in Polish and Estonian airspaces. This requires an urgent need for the transition from reactive behavior model to the proactive deterrence strategy. Effective answer to the modern challenges requires synergy of efforts at national and pan-European levels. The willingness of European countries to increase defense spending depends on the distance to the border of Russia. The Baltic, the Nordic countries, Poland, are well aware to the Peru, while Spain, Portugal, and the Balkans are still hesitant. And the last one, let me finish regarding defense industrial base. From our perspective, the changes in the nature of combat operations, widespread use of strike UAVs, electronic warfare systems, network-centric situational awareness systems, artificial intelligence, UAV interceptors, gives small startups a chance to enter to the market with competitive products. Ukraine knows how to do it, how it works, and ready to share its experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Georgios?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a privilege to be among these distinguished speakers and esteemed guests. For sure, I believe we are facing a structural transformation, and for no way a temporary one. And as all the speakers mentioned, this is very well justified from the situation in Ukraine and in Europe. But I see there a challenge. This spending, which is very well justified, should and we should transform it into very credible capabilities. That's the challenge. And to do this, I believe we should have to schedule to have deterrence by design. So to speak about Greece, we face some challenged security situation in our region. So we have a relatively good base in defense in comparison with some other countries in Europe, and we fully understand the situation and the necessity for that. For that, we have implemented a 12 years procurement plan, and we are very happy that we have seen the first results nowadays. So we procured some very advanced systems like frigates or fighters, but we also have launched a strategic plan for research and development programs. And permit me, I'm coming from the innovation branch of our Joint General Staff. I believe that there is also a solution we should seek for gaining all these capabilities we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Benita, let's come back to you. Given your experience as a former commissioner and Minister of Foreign Affairs, how do you think Europe's political mindset has shifted over the past 3 years?
Well, first of all, I think the geopolitical situation has totally shifted, as we all acknowledge. But then I think we also have understood that there are real existential threats to us, and that has changed the political will of our leaders. Before, as I said, we had the common security and defense policy as a sort of theoretical, important goal, but we haven't done anything. And now, really, we see the necessity and also the speed that is necessary. So I think these two major things. Now, we have to take our populations with us. This is much more complicated. But let me say one thing. I think we should consider, and that's very interesting, the so-called Alcide project. Maybe some of you know it, that the Dublin Law Institute has proclaimed. And that is, they propose to use the former European Defense Community that has been mentioned today by Commissioner Avramopoulos, that had been proposed by France, then unfortunately rejected by the Parliamentary Assembly of France, and ratified by 4 countries out of the 6, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, but not by France, and when France rejected, also not by Italy. Now, what these experts in law say, they say if France and Italy ratified now, it would still be valid, and it would also be okay with international and national law, and would support this, and think that the EDC architecture is a fantastic, viable blueprint of a comprehensive defense integration, and thus could make things quicker. I don't know if it's true, but I thought I should bring it up.
Thank you. Andrei, from the battlefield perspective, what capabilities matter most in modern warfare?
Yep, thank you. Ukraine relies on the massive usage, relatively inexpensive technological solution to compensate for the lack of people and equipment on the battlefield. Ukrainian Defense Forces in actively increasing the use of drones in the warfare. Unmanned systems already play a key role on the battlefield. They cause up to 80–90% of the enemy losses on the front line. Multi-domain coordination and artificial intelligence. Ukraine's greatest innovation is the orchestration of three domains, the air, land, and sea, into unmanned systems operations. Using shared intelligence and artificial intelligence platforms such as Delta system, operators coordinate data from drones, satellite, acoustic sensors to achieve real-time situational awareness. This capability allows Ukrainian forces to conduct robot-only ground assaults and to execute multi-domain operations across strategic distance. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's shift now to discussion of industrial capacity and procurement reform. Starting with you, Nikos. Can Europe's defense industrial base scale quickly enough to meet the moment, and where do you see the bottlenecks?
Okay, first of all, I believe the European industrial base has the know-how and the technologies necessary to build systems. The real problem remains the fragmentation of this industrial base, and the second thing is the speed at which governments make decisions in order to allow for long-term contracts. Industries can scale up, can develop. We have the technological know-how. However, if the contracting lacks, or if it's not long-term, or if it's multi-procurements in multi-countries, then it doesn't work. This is what really needs to be fixed. Regarding the fragmentation of the industrial base, I must go back and say that 30 years ago, the US really, the fragmented industry, sort of combined itself, and then we had 5 majors with first and second and third tier contractors. If you look at the European landscape, everybody, we still have 5 majors, but we have a lot more companies spread all over European Union. Each country wants its own industries to work. Each country wants to do its own procurements. So unless this whole system changes, then I don't believe in the long term that we're going to be able to sustain a long-term industrial base. And let's not forget that despite the fact that we have the right technology background, we have the right employees, don't forget that these employees compete for the same jobs, high-tech jobs, and high engineering jobs. And some of this competition means that these employees go and work elsewhere, like either in the US or in Asia. So there is a lot of competition even for the workforce employment, and unless there is stability and the long-term contracting, this problem is not going to be solved. So let's hope that one of the solutions at the European, this is why I said institutional, is to fix the fragmentation of the defense industry, which needs to merge and combine. And the second thing is the contracting. The contracting needs to be long-term so there can be investments made and stability for the systems to be produced.
Thank you. Thank you. Ed, what role does infrastructure play in deterrence and military readiness?
Well, from where I sit, I think one of the clearest constraints we've got to face is physical capacity. So rearmament is not abstract. It depends on the factories, the shipyards, the depots, energy supply and transmission of that energy, transport networks, and then, of course, a skilled workforce to deliver and sustain all of that which I've described. Now, you can allocate a budget really quickly. You cannot build capacity overnight. We've really got to get our heads around that. I think in many areas, infrastructure is now the rate-limiting step. And I say that seeing many big defense programs get set up and start, and the infrastructure needs to be getting going right at the very beginning of that, because some of the infrastructure we're talking about takes shipyards a decade to put in place, right? And you don't get submarines or ships without the infrastructure there first. So whether it's ammunition production, naval basing, or airfield resilience, what we are really talking about is a foundational level and layer of engineering and delivery capacity that enables everything else, and at the heart of that is infrastructure. So back to the heart of your question, in terms of is there sufficient urgency, I think we need to move a whole damn lot faster. And our future deterrence absolutely relies upon it.
Thank you. Georgios, can Europe rebuild ammunition and missile production capacity fast enough?
Thank you for this question. I think you're talking about strategic priorities now, and I believe my colleague Colonel from Ukraine will agree with that. Yes, I believe it can and it should. For sure, we had that capability in 1970s, but this capability, let's say, failed, and now we should move in a very quick way. Of course, I will use the words of Nikos. That means that we should face the fragmentation. That means that we should have a resilient defense industrial base. Industry has to play a crucial role in this. The military needs it. The military will support this effort. And for sure, as the Commissioner said, we need to move fast. We need long-term programs. Of course, it's not going to be easy, but it's absolutely a necessity. Thank you.
Miltiades, you were talking earlier about how European shipbuilding capacity has shrunk dramatically, I think over several decades. Can it be rebuilt fast enough?
Well, let me say that I totally agree with how Nikos presented things. A fragmented sector with high competition among its members, with lack of cooperation. Biggest, let's say, shipyard that doesn't belong in one of these groups, I can tell you that we are working with all the major players in the naval business, and everybody face the same challenge. They are lacking the capacity to build. And it takes a long time to have a shipyard available. But it takes a long time also to have the right people. And coming from the country like Greece, that has not been a free rider of the global system in the last decades, we were investing in our defense. Even during and amid the crisis, we maintain a high level of spending. And we know that facing multiple threats, and particular threats, we know that at the end, we have to have our own defense industry to cope with our needs, because in one time, one night, one day, maybe none of our allies would be there to fight our war. So for Greece, it's even more critical to develop these capabilities. And the abandonment and what has happened in the last few years, it was really a disgrace for our country and for its defense capabilities. Coming back to what you say, is it easy to rebuild a shipbuilding, a vivid shipbuilding industry in Europe? I try to be optimistic, but I cannot really say that in a foreseeable future, we are going to dominate in the shipbuilding industry as we used to dominate in the past. And I think that it needs a very complex combined effort, starting from schools that will direct people back to specialized blue-collar jobs, to the energy, which is very expensive, to the red tape that is locally produced or produced in Brussels, which is unbelievable to imagine, and of course to the state aid rules that all the international players bend, and we are very rigid standing behind them. Ed said about the long-term infrastructure process of a shipyard, and he said that we need 10, 15, 20 years in order to develop a shipyard. In China, there was an abandoned shipyard called the Dalian shipyard, and it was taken over by Hensley. They took it over, they signed with the Communist Party of China in June. They stepped in September, and they started producing in February. So they delivered their first ship, not a small ship, a VLCC, very large crude carrier of 330,000 tons, only 18 months after. And if you read the shipping news, every day they get they build up an order book of all the numbers that you can imagine in all categories of large ships. So things can be done with the means we have. It means that we want to do it. We put the state behind it. We put the financing behind it. And yes, I think we have the right people to do it and to do it even better.
Thank you. Let's now discuss technology and the future force. Andre, how has battlefield technology evolved over the course of the war?
Thank you. The Ukraine's defense forces have transformed modern war by heavily integrating unmanned systems across the air, land, and sea domains. This asymmetric and multi-domain strategy led to create of the unmanned system forces of the world's first independent military branch dedicated entirely to robotic warfare. Aerial domain, unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, remain at the backbone of Ukraine's multi-domain strategy, evolving to the basic reconnaissance tools into fully integrated weapon systems. Strike and ISR, FPV drones, first-person view, drones and larger loitering munition continue to target enemy armor, logistics, and personnel. Tactical evolution. Drone operations have advanced to utilize fiber optic cables to evade electronic warfare systems jamming. Alongside machine learning and artificial intelligence, coordination for the automated target tracking. Sea domain. Ukraine's naval drones campaign has fundamentally altered naval war in the Black Sea. USVs, uncrewed surface vessels such as the Magura and Sea Baby series, are used by Ukrainian defense forces to actively patrol and strike Russian warships, pushing the Russian Black Sea fleet back to the eastern part of the Black Sea. The second Black Sea fleet, Russian Black Sea fleet, naval base Novorossiysk, and security vital export corridors. Asymmetric capabilities. Upgraded sea drones variants are deployed to perform intelligence, surveillance, and to shut down enemy aircrafts, fighter aircrafts. Land domain, unmanned ground vehicles, UGVs, and ground robots are scaling rapidly, serving as essential force multipliers that reduce human casualties. Command and engineering. UGVs execute high-risk tasks such as clearing mines, laying new explosives, and engaging autonomous combat assaults. Logistic. Ground robots are widely utilized to safely transport critical supplies and evacuate wounded warriors from the battlefield. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Nikos, what technologies should Europe prioritize if it wants to leapfrog rather than just catch up?
You're right, catch up is not an option. I mean, legacy systems that we have and let's say we've been buying outside of Europe, trying to reproduce those, I don't think is the real answer. The real answer is for the future battle space to invest in most important areas like AI-enabled systems, like autonomous platforms, as we talked before, space and satellite capabilities, advanced sensors, and of course, cybersecurity and resilient communications is what really should drive the technological base in Europe in order to develop and become more self-sufficient and self-effective. I must make a comment. I don't know if you very recently heard a comment that was made by Mr. Macron that Europe also needs the digital tools. For example, we rely a lot on American technologies like Oracle, Microsoft, and Google. And part of the problem for this resilience, or having the resilience, is to try also to be independent in the digital era in developing all these systems. I'm not saying it's easy, but somebody needs to look into that future. And I also want to say in one area that is very also critical and is also driven by this AI, the sovereign data seems to be the most important thing that the country can own in order to be able to fight the security and defense challenges that it may face in the future. I think we saw that very recently, not only in Ukraine, but we saw that more evident lately in the Middle East. So this is one area where I need to say that the digital transformation is probably one of the most important pillars for the future of the defense and security industry.
Thank you. Georgios, how does the military integrate rapidly evolving commercial technologies without compromising operational interoperability and security?
Well, it's something we are looking very, very carefully, and for sure Ukraine has shown us the way. So yes, commercial solutions can be good enough for operations, and actually coming and serving the innovation coming from the field of innovation, I believe there is our opportunity. I will, Nikos, I will use the phrase to catch up and find our pace. So commercial and actually cheap solutions can serve well enough our operational needs. It's something we should invest, and for sure we should look where we can find cheap in-nation produced solutions to supplement the legacy systems. Every system, I think, it's necessary. So we can use these commercial solutions in a complementary way by the legacy systems in order to achieve our goals. We should not forget also the emerging technologies, like Nikos said, because it's safer to run, let's say, to run from the same line with the opponent and not try to catch up with him when he has already run 2 circles in the ground. So yes, maybe the solution is also in emerging technologies. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. So as you can see, we're coming to an end. So I want to skip ahead and go to our final question, which was a question for everybody, and start with Benita. What is the single most important thing Europe must do over the next 24 months to establish credible deterrence?
Well, I think we have to go on very quickly. I am absolutely sure that we need, as a great goal and a long-term goal, the strategic autonomy. But in order to get that, we also have to be unified in the European Union, and there we have a challenge. Not everybody will always be on the same side. Therefore, I personally think that we should go for coalition of the willing, which is more or less what is already in the treaty, the so-called reinforced cooperation, where a third of the member states can go ahead if the others are ready, and when they are ready, they can also join. I think that might be a very good formula to go forward, which is absolutely necessary. I am in favor of strategic autonomy. We have to do that, and I'm sure that the great part of the member states also want it. Now, we do also have other very important challenges, and this is the today's weaponization of absolutely everything. That means now of energy, of fertilizers, of food security, of migration, and that is something that is being used very, very strongly against us. Again here, we have to do something, and it's interesting to hear that also the question of workers is so important. I think what we have to do is, until now we have all spoken against illegal migration and so on, and all the negative sides. But we have to start to have the courage to speak about legal migration that we need in order to be able to do what we have to do and in order to have the workers. Now, let me just very briefly also say a word on what we, Austria, is doing. We are proud to take a proactive leadership role in 2 capability areas. One is the artificial intelligence and the quantum technologies, collaborating with Slovenia and with Denmark to counter against the most important future cryptographic threats. And as a designated lead nation for AI, Austria also is driving the standardization of defense-related AI through the European Defense Base project, ensuring shared, sovereign, and ethical standards for autonomous systems. I think this is important. And since mobility was mentioned by the actual commissioner, I think we're also a credible supporter of mobility and military Schengen, because we are a geographical transit country and we have to do so. And finally, I wanted to say that my country also participates in the PCA air and missile defense, as well as drones and counter-drones systems.
Thank you. Ed, I want to take the question over to you now. That's okay.
Sure. I think we need to recognise that rearming Europe is not simply a procurement challenge. It's a whole system delivery challenge, and success is going to be defined not by the plans that we announce, but actually the pace at which we build, deploy, and sustain capability. And that's got to be at speed, and it's got to be at scale to be relevant.
Thank you. Miltiadis, over to you.
Well, I've been in that position discussing over at the General Affairs Council about the future of Europe. And when we were discussing, it seemed to me that nobody realized that how seaborne is the European Union all itself. The history of Europe is seaborne, from the Athenian times to the Roman Empire, to the Venetians, to the great expeditions of the Spaniards, to the British Empire, to the Dutch, to the Vikings. Everything was seaborne. And Europe is neglecting sea altogether. It penalizes transport of goods and energy, putting extra tariffs for ships to get into Europe, penalizing energy resources, penalizing and undermining its competitiveness all the time. So I think if Europe wants to realize and play a role in the world affairs, it should look in an introvert way, but it should look overseas, not only at the United States, as it used to look for 60 years now, because overseas, the United States is not looking to Europe anymore, and it didn't happen with President Trump. It started 15 years ago, 10 years ago, this shift of interest of the United States, and start to look how to dominate these great seaways and how to be relevant again in the international commerce and the international defense. This would be my advice to the European leaders.
Thank you, thank you. So with 1 minute left, Andre, I think it's fitting, and with great respect, we're going to leave you with the last word on how to establish deterrence.
Thank you so much. So the first one, review the budget. The second one, give the chance to the startups, I mean the small startups. The third one, to reduce the quantity of defense industry companies, national companies, reduce the quantity, and create the bigger international, inter-Europe countries, inter-Europe defense companies that should be responsible for all over the European countries, the armed forces. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.